Hello, everyone. A quick disclaimer before we get into the episode. Green Team received an arc of A Drop of Corruption by Robert Jackson Bennett, courtesy of NetGalley and Del Rey. We thank them for the early copy for review. All opinions are our own. Hope you enjoy the episode.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Green Team of the Legendarium. My name is Soul. I'm your guest, and I'm your guest host today. Today we are covering A Drop of Corruption by Robert Jackson Bennett, and leading us and joining me is Starkast,
Hi.
and we have Mirlya from the Green Team.
Hello.
All right, so the three of us are here. This is book number 2 in the Starcast. Tell me, is this a Leviathan? What is this trilogy or the series called?
I think it's called The Shadow of the Leviathan.
Okay. All right, I knew Leviathan was in there somewhere. Okay. Yeah, so this is a very interesting book. So what we're going to do for this episode format is we're going to give you a non-spoiler section. We'll talk about our, just our vague impressions. We're trying not to spoil you, maybe some very light details, and then we'll have the main spoiler episode after that. So I guess the first thing to do is Starcast. Did you like this book? And what are your general impressions on it with no spoilers?
Okay, so I did enjoy the book overall, but I thought it was weaker than the last one, than the first one. It felt more thriller-like to me than murder mystery, because it's very quick. It gets quickly clear who the culprit is,
Hmm.
and it's more about catching the killer than the actual mystery, the murder mystery aspect of it. And that's normally something I'm not too keen on. And the other thing is it felt like there was a lot less character moments between the characters. Like when we got those moments, they were really strong, but it took quite a lot of time between those moments, and those in between moments often often stretched a bit too long for me.
Okay, that's very fair. I definitely have some more thoughts on that when we get into the spoiler side. I also enjoyed the book. I actually think I did prefer it more than the first book, but like you said, it's very clear who the culprit is in this one. It's less about the mystery of who and more of the finding and acquiring and that kind of plot line. I still enjoyed the character moments as well, just like you did. Mirlya, what about you? What did you think?
I I agree that it's a little bit less. I felt like when reading the first book, you feel like you're getting taken along for the ride because you've got no idea what's going on.
Mm,
Whereas this one, you are able to picture and kind of almost predict the things that are going to happen or who the people are involved are going to be a little bit more. But I think that the way that we learn about each individual character was done a little bit better than it was in the first, because I feel like we finished the first book and our main characters was, well, at least one of our main characters was still a little bit of a mystery to us.
mm.
And I felt like we got to know them a little bit better in this one, based on how they operated and solved the murder.
Yeah, I'm I'm a bit curious. What did you all think about the direction this book took, and the time skip from the first book? What did you think about that?
I kind of liked it. It the way the series seems to present itself is that we get the murder mystery in the first book. and then you get something similar in concept in the second book, but it's less about following a very strict timeline with Din and his and Anna. It's more about the events of the world, I think it is. So we're skipping over, like in a TV show that's procedural and you have all these episodes, they'll mention something that happens in between episodes if of minor importance. That's what it felt like to me, and I kind of like that. It gave a little bit more growth to what Din was dealing with in between the end of the first book and the start of the second book. Uh, what about you, Mario? What do you think?
Yeah, I think that the books themselves kind of, whilst they're not standalone because they're part of a greater whole, each book has its own focus with the story, and obviously there's like this overarching um, character identity thing that's sort of over the top of the actual series itself, but each book is sort of standing on its own. So I didn't think that the time skip was that unusual.
Honestly, I read the first book again and then the second one immediately afterward.
Mm,
And for me personally, it was a bit not abrupt, but it took me a moment to get into it
okay.
because the first book ended in a kind of way where it kind of promised that you would meet a certain character in the second one. Um, well, if you're listening to, I don't think it's a spoiler to say this because it's in the first book. But the what are they called? The commander above the commander.
Oh, yeah, there's a
The
whole there's an
con,
entire
cons,
appendix in the start of the book
uh,
almost. They list the ranking order of all the leaders in order of their command structure. I think it's like
yes,
prefecto and there's imperium and let me try and pull it up while we're talking. Okay,
it's the one.
so we have the smallest is militus, and then it's the princeps, the signum, which I believe that's our din. He's the signum. We have a
Mm,
captain, an immunis, a commander, commander prefecto, and then the highest is the consulate, and then you have the
consulate.
emperor, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, consulate.
Hmm.
Because Din was meeting Anna's employee
Right.
uh, at in the last book, and we didn't get to see that. So I kind of expected it to start with that,
Hmm.
and so when it was a time skip for over a year, it was it was a bit surprising, just, and it took me a moment to get used to that.
Yeah. I guess we didn't even really hear about that particular character in the book either.
Mm,
Right.
I
That's true.
think once. I think he was mentioned.
Yeah, I think it was very brief. Yeah, I think they're trying to set up certain plot lines to be throughout the entire series, and some solved in this next book or two. It's hard for me to tell which ones are which because the world building is very. It's very interesting the way that the elements of the world move and how fast paced their technology seems to be possibly changing. I won't say anything else in this spoiler-free version. I'll save that for the spoiler talk. But there's a grand scale of movement, both politically and structurally.
What did you think about world building in general in this book, or also where the book took place?
Mhm.
Because I myself was very surprised of the location where we were in, because I didn't expect to move out of the empire, because I thought with each book we would get further and further into the empire.
Right. Yeah, we went out. Yeah, as far as those was it the three rings. Yeah, we went honestly, and it was a little confusing at first for me. Uh,
Mm,
I didn't expect it either. It was a little abrupt. It felt like to be all of a sudden we're out of the empire, and I didn't because it'd been almost a year since I had read the first book. I didn't exactly remember where we were, so I figured it'd be okay.
Oh,
And then I was like, wow, these names aren't making sense, and I had to look through the map a few times. But other than that, the location I actually kind of liked. The temperature, the climate, the descriptions, very interesting, especially because it reminds me of where I live in Florida. So it's very similar without the magical fantasy elements. But yeah, it was interesting to see something so close to home as far as what's in a fantasy novel. But yeah, Mirlya, what did you think? Did you like this change in location?
Yeah, I mean, it's still sort of on the outer edges of the ring, so it's not like we never went closer into the
Hmm.
Empire. And I think that with the focus of where the book and the story was taken, it makes sense to be where it was. And I liked the contrast, I guess, in the setting and the way that it was described as sort of like a world that or a city that was built in a certain with a certain purpose, and then because it got dangerous they kind of abandoned it
Right.
and all of the important people moved somewhere else, but then they still use those abandoned buildings to house important people because they're the places that were built for that purpose.
Well, I thought it was interesting because they're talking about the architect, blah, blah, about the buildings, in the sense that it was also used politically, and the way they also used to show power over certain people without going into too much spoilers.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah.
All right. Well, before we get too far in it, because it seems like we're hitting that wall of what we want to talk about, and it's gonna need to
Oh,
be spoilered, I think. Did you have any other last questions before we wrap up this spoiler-free version, Starcast?
oh yeah. I I was wondering, did you have any characters you liked in this book, or any what how should I say it? What did you think of the characters in this book in general, of the character moments?
Yeah, Mirrell, you want to go first?
Sure. I think that without, I mean, this is a difficult question to
Mm,
answer,
yes.
spoiler free. Uh, um, the character interactions, one of the characters went in a direction that I wasn't expecting them to go, and the other character, I enjoyed the little tidbits of information that we learnt about them because they in themselves are a mystery in this mystery of a book. And I think that the interactions and the other characters, the supporting characters that we met in the book, all had distinct personalities. They all had agendas, and I enjoyed the way that these characters had their own voices and they were all distinct from each other. Like you didn't get these supporting characters who were all just kind of the same, but they all had a distinct way of interacting with the world and each other and other
Yeah,
people.
that's a good point.
And I think that really brings, yeah, it really brings a sense of immersion into the book because everyone is unique and these characters are actually written quite distinctly from each
Yeah,
other.
it's like the test of Malazan doesn't really use a lot of speaker tags. So to me, this is something where like this, you could easily remove almost all the speaker tags, and I would still know who's talking, just based on what they're saying and their personality bleeding through their words choice. And I'm along for the ride. This is not spoilers for me. I like the characters. You get more of what you got in the first book. It's the same relationship as far as like that mentor mentee. That's like the main reason I really like this series so much. It's very fun and intriguing to me to watch that. And yeah, so I'm along for the ride. This is definitely something I enjoy the characters in, and I don't even have to spoil anything because you get more of what you got in the first one, and other stuff too. That's even better.
Yeah. And I personally, I I was surprised at a at one specific side character.
Hmm.
Um, the one we meet at the very beginning and who we followed through the whole story. I really liked where we were going with her. but most of the other side characters, it felt not quite as intimate as in the first book. But I would also say that it makes sense in the way where Din is mentally in this book, because he is quite disillusioned with the Empire and looks for ways to dissociate from it, and he goes through his own problems, which was also the part I struggled with the most in the book, with Din's character arc in general. Um, I really liked getting to know Anna more and her mysteries. So the characters themselves were a little bit of a mixed bag for me.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's all I got. If I was gonna rate it, or honestly, I'm not even gonna rate it without spoilers. I'm just gonna say I recommend it if you like the first book. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think you should definitely read this. It's slightly different than what you might expect, but it's still in the same vein of world building and what it's trying to do.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Any other last closing thoughts before we wrap this mini part up?
Nope.
Oh, okay. Well, that's gonna do it. This was our spoiler-free version. Thank you, Panda. And then we will do this again for the main episode with spoilers. So this has been Soul, myself. This has been Starkast,
Bye.
and this has been Mirlya.
Bye, everyone.
So thank you all. This has been the Legendary Green Team, and thank you, Craig, for letting us have a small slice of your media empire with the Legendarium. And check in next time. We're gonna do the spoiler version of this Drop of Corruption by Robert Jackson Bennett. Thank you, everybody.